Welcome to the latest episode of Powering Production, the podcast where we unpack the biggest energy challenges facing UK manufacturers and how to overcome them. Like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest episodes.
Thanks for joining me today, James. Really nice to have you here. Could we start off by you explaining to the people watching or listening who you are and what you do?
Yes, so James Napier, I'm the founder of Notch. We're a carbon accounting software platform, so we help companies of all sizes and sectors to measure, track and report their carbon emissions.
Fantastic. So Power and Production is a manufacturing-specific podcast. What would you say are the most expensive mistakes that manufacturers are making around SECR, ESOS or Scope 3, particularly around energy-intensive processes? And what should they do to avoid them in 2026?
So I think one of the most expensive mistakes is really leaving it too late. So often if it isn't planned, as you know, with production, it costs more than if it is planned up front. So I think with SECR and ESOS is making sure that you've got a plan, you understand the timeframes, and actually build a route to get the information that you need.
Are there any upcoming regulatory changes over the next sort of 12 to 24 months that will hit manufacturers, particularly those with high baseload machinery?
I think there isn't anything that's specific to manufacturing per se. I haven't seen that there's much more coming out from government at the moment. That seems to be a bit of a lull in terms of new legislation, but certainly supply chains are driving it. And I think the big thing is their customers are having to account for information, so for emissions. So if you're an energy-intensive user and you've got lots of emissions, then your customers are going to want to understand that and what you're doing about it more. And we're certainly starting to see more supply chains putting more stringent targets on especially manufacturing businesses. And if you haven't got the set of information to be able to show what your core emissions are and what you're planning to do with it, you become much less attractive to customers as we move forward.
So where would you say carbon reporting generates financial returns for manufacturers?
So I think we're seeing a lot, I think, in three areas. One is winning and retaining work. So, and that comes in two parts. One is tender compliance, a pass-fail, yes, no, can you do it? But also the opportunity to develop and innovate new products. So lower carbon as a driver for innovation is becoming quite prevalent. We're seeing a number of our clients specifically developing those low carbon solutions, which is giving them an advantage over their competitors. Reducing cost is another part. Most businesses have structural cost. This is how the business runs. It isn't broken. It doesn't rise to the top of priorities to reassess it. But we often see, by understanding the emission math of those processes, it gives you a good opportunity to have a look at that, change those processes, and very often take cost out. And the third one is attracting, retaining talent and engaging employees. So in any business, doing what you can to get employees more enthused about coming to work can only be a positive.
If a manufacturer needs credible carbon reporting by year end, what would you say are the first 6 actions that they should be taking?
So I think the first one is really to understand the requirement, understand whether you're doing this to meet a need. I would have said 99% of all the customers that we support are doing it because someone is telling them that they have to. So what are you trying to achieve? Data is the biggest single challenge for any company. So have a data plan in place. Really understand, once you've got the core set of data, where your gaps are and how you're going to fill them, whether you can fill them with actual data, whether you need to make some assumptions. Give yourself time. We often see people scrambling around at the last minute. So the longer that you can give yourself, the better quality and the easier it will be on the business. Choose a carbon intensity metric carefully. So most businesses, all businesses want to grow. So your emissions are likely to go up in the short term, but an intensity metric is a measure of carbon efficiency. So it's possible for your absolute emissions to go up, but your intensity to come down. So that needs choosing carefully. And then the last thing is don't be afraid of the numbers. There's a huge number of our clients who think they start here and net zero is a straight line. And the answer is you'll make some progress. Sometimes you'll go backwards. So you need to understand that and be able to explain the movements to your stakeholders.
Across various manufacturing sites, which processes do you see sort of causing the biggest reporting errors or blind spots?
So I think that's probably more energy consumption rather than carbon emissions. But efficient energy consumption is really a part of sustainability. So I have a background in energy efficiency, and that's always been sensible from a financial point of view. Energy efficiency, and especially under SECR, having to report the amount of energy that you consume, it's another key drive of showing that you're being environmentally sensitive and environmentally responsible.
For Scope 3, which categories genuinely have an impact for manufacturers and which ones are really more like low-value distractions?
So I think the key ones for manufacturing is getting to increasingly be able to report a product-level carbon footprint to start with. So the categories for that are the input components, the transportation and distribution, and then also the input energy. So ultimately, there is an increasing expectation that companies will be able to tell their customers, here's my product, here's the cost, here's the carbon embodied within that product, and here's a confidence level around the data I've used to calculate that. So actually understanding carbon across those three areas is going to be key.
Are there any immediate red flags that tell you a manufacturer's carbon data is unreliable?
I think most carbon data has a level of unreliability in it at the moment. I think as we move to product carbon footprints and life cycle assessments, there's a data quality score built into what's called the PACT, the Partnership for Carbon Transparency. Anything that's a 3 says it's really quite unreliable data. But I think there's an element of a company making the effort to at least generate a product carbon footprint is a positive. So create one even if the data is poor, and then improve that data score over time.
What carbon data do major customers and retailers expect manufacturers to provide today? And what would be the minimum credible level?
So today, the minimum credible level are Scope 1 and 2 emissions. So that is direct emissions, essentially the fuels you use in your business, so gas and fuels in vehicles that the company owns, and indirect emissions in energy that you buy in, which generally is electricity. And then I think going back to this requirement for product carbon footprinting, it will then expand from there to say, can you tell us the embodied emissions of what you're manufacturing?
How are leading manufacturers using carbon and energy data in order to strengthen their tender responses rather than scrambling to keep up?
So I think that there's two parts to that. One is we're increasingly seeing tenders as a pass-fail, especially in the public sector, the pass-fail on sustainability, but also supply chains are saying if they don't achieve certain levels of sustainability by certain timeframes, they won't be able to be a supplier. I don't think any company's going to break its supply chain, but if they've got more options, they can drop suppliers that haven't made that progress. But I think that the bigger part of it is really using lower carbon as a differentiator. So if you think simplistically, most of your competitors can do the basics as well as you can. If you can offer a product that's more sustainable, that's lower carbon, that's more recyclable on a total life cycle basis, then it gives you an added edge for your customers to buy from you.
So for sites with older machinery and maybe limited data, what will be the minimum viable approach to them building a credible carbon baseline?
So again, the age of the machinery is about the consumption rather than necessarily how you measure carbon. So it would be the total consumption of that, and then making a plan to reduce your consumption, to reduce your carbon emissions down, would then take you down to an asset level assessment to say, if we upgraded this machine, not only is there a financial saving, but there's also an additional carbon saving that we can get and report that as part of our reduction plan.
How should multi-site manufacturers prioritise which plants or processes to baseline first so that they can get the best commercial and operational impact, in your view?
So I think that's probably what pressure the company's under. So if they produce certain types of equipment, at the moment we've got the carbon border adjustment mechanism that's going live in the EU, that's going to come into the UK with the UK CBAM as well. And we're seeing a lot of manufacturers now being obligated to have to report the carbon emissions of material they export to the EU. So that's setting a priority level. The rest of it would be around, I guess, how much of it do I sell and how important is it and how loud are my customers shouting for me to do something?
What level of energy visibility does a manufacturer really need in order to achieve accurate reporting? And is there anything in there that might be unnecessary?
So at the moment, they need just kind of total consumption. And that can be really total consumption on an annual basis. That will move probably not until 2028 to half hourly and an hourly matching. So they will need to have that level of detail. But really, the benefit of acting to reduce emissions is reducing cost. And to do that, you really need half hourly data.
What short-term actions reliably reduce carbon and cost for manufacturers around things like machine idle time, out-of-hours load, and things like process scheduling?
I mean, all very good energy efficiency measures. And I think understanding where you've got out-of-hours loads, that half-hourly data is really critical to be able to do that. We say, I'll go back to my energy efficiency days. Often you've got assets that are running that don't need to. You very often have assets working against each other. Heating, cooling is a classic one. And we've also seen assets that are running that aren't connected, and therefore they're just wasting electricity.
What would you say is the most damaging myth in carbon reporting that holds manufacturers back particularly around accuracy, technology or effort required?
I think there are two. I think one is people think that it should be easy, and it's easy in part, but there's parts of it that are really hard. So we see a lot of people go down spend-based conversion because they can take everything they spend and convert it to carbon emissions. That's been proven to be between 10 and 200% wrong. So there's a great kind of feeling of positivity that I've completed my carbon emissions, and then you try and put a plan in to reduce them, and you can't. And the data starting point, I think it was phrased that one of the COPs, you wouldn't make an investment decision on data that's 200% wrong. So I think the challenge really with carbon accounting is to embrace data as a challenge, as probably as upsetting as that sounds, but then less is more. So actually pick the data that you want, put a plan in place to be able to acquire that as efficiently as possible, and then work to use that data to help the business.
Lastly, is there anything that we haven't discussed today that you think from a carbon reporting point of view is vital for manufacturers to be aware of?
I think the key thing is, and it, again, sometimes this is about timing, but sustainability is going to be important to every business, manufacturers specifically, because of the potential broader impact of their operations on the environment. So the key thing is to actually, I think, accept that over time, environmental performance, carbon efficiency is going to be a bit like health and safety. It's got to be part of how the manufacturing business actually works. You can't outsource health and safety. You can't outsource environmental sustainability. So I think having a plan, ticking a box to meet a customer request is fine. But longer term, if you don't have a plan as how you're going to make sustainability part of how the business operates, you're always going to be fighting sustainability as an additional thing. And I think we're seeing more and more businesses, especially manufacturing businesses, who are starting to put sustainability as part of their core decision-making, their core reporting, and that takes away the pain of sustainability because it's just how the business operates rather than something that we have to find time to do in addition to what we do day to day.
Is there any additional support for manufacturers around carbon reporting if they really don't know how to start or they're struggling with it?
There are plenty of carbon accounting services out there. Manufacture 2030 is set up specifically to help them. I think that provides a good starting point. It's a free service, and I think sometimes free gets you what free will pay for. So it's a good place to start. I think the most important thing is to try and understand what journey your business needs to go on, where you are. Businesses are in different cycles, in different markets, with different opportunities. And really, when you're thinking about the future commercial strategy for your business, try and work with someone who can help you understand how sustainability can enhance that.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
No problem. Thank you.
Great to have you. Thank you.